Hello. Please forgive my antiseptic space here. I'm not very comfortable in this space. This is a big empty condo, and my husband is currently making an awful lot of noise at the house, so I've come down here to tape. This is Victoria Pendragon. This is my alternate reality. This really is an alternate reality. It's way too clean. I thought I would like to talk today a little bit about that wonderful interdimensional period of time that we call death. Death has fascinated me since I was a child, probably because both my parents were pathologists. So I grew up with death. I grew up in the autopsy room. I've helped at autopsies. Death was no stranger to me, and nothing I was ever afraid of. And it touched them. In fact, our babysitters, when we were children, our babysitter was the daughter of an undertaker, just to keep it in the same vibe. So I've been comfortable with death, which was a good thing at various points in my life when I came awfully close. I may not be able to wrap up everything I'd like to tell you about with regard to the magic of that time, but I will start with my introduction to my own understanding that I had a special connection with it beyond the comfort that I knew. Because like most things in my life, I had no idea what I could do and who I was until it was kind of grafted onto me from the outside. I, at the time, was living in Wyncote, Pennsylvania, where I spent about 2 years. And my children were young, probably first and second grade or so, and off at school. And it was in the house alone. It was a large house and rather empty and bland, like this space. And I was just there temporarily. And I heard something. I stopped. And it sounded like someone was calling my name from the upstairs floors. No one was home that I knew about, certainly no one that knew me. So I wasn't afraid, but it was just odd. So I went up the stairs following the voice that was calling my name repeatedly. And when I got to where the sound was coming from, there was my cat. A young cat, and I had thought perfectly healthy, lying on the floor, looking very limp. So I went to pick her up, and she just died in my arms. And I thought, well, that's interesting. As I've mentioned before, I don't really have any real strong connection that I can ever initiate with animals, but they do seem to be able to contact me. And so this one had called, I guess, to die in my arms, but I suppose at some level, as it happened, to alert me to my sensitivity to the process of dying. Because within the week, I had an appointment that had been set for me to have a minor surgery of some sort done. I believe it was a dermatological thing, something cosmetic on my face. I don't even remember now. Probably a mole of some sort. And when I arrived at the doctor's office, she came out to meet me wearing one of those oxygen devices that people can sort of strap onto. She had a little pole, that she walked with and had the oxygen tank on it, and she herself was breathing oxygen. And I inquired after her health. She was a woman I had known when I was younger, a friend of my mother's. And she told me that she had been suffering, her term, with emphysema. And I could tell that she was indeed suffering. I could feel that. As I sat in the chair and she prepared me for the small procedure, I allowed myself to feel what she was feeling inside. A gift that was a carryover from my childhood abuse, when I would feel what was going on inside my abusers. In this case, and this is the first time that I recall, I was using that gift to feel what was going on in someone where it was not my concern, but something that seemed to call for my assistance. So I felt her suffering, and I felt, it seemed to me, a desire to leave the body, and I didn't sense anything beyond that, and so all I could do, quietly and without speaking, was to communicate at a subconscious, unconscious level to this lovely being that it would be okay to leave, that there was nothing wrong with leaving, that at a certain point in life one is allowed to leave if one wants. And it was fairly quick, took probably only as long as it took to tell you that. And then I shifted gears and went back into a normal state, and everything was over by then, and I left. The next day, I heard from my mother that she had died in her sleep that night. And I thought it very nice, and realized that perhaps she had heard the voice, felt the sensation perhaps, felt the permission that allowed her to go. Anyway, I was glad to have been a part of that. Some years later, I was called upon by a relative, not a close relative, but a distant relative, who came to me and told me that her grandmother was dying, that she was in the hospital, and she just didn't seem to be able to let go, and that she had been there for quite some time. She asked me if I would visit her. Now, I hadn't let any of this information out, so again, somebody recognized that I had a gift I didn't know I had, or hadn't, at this point, didn't know what to do with, in a sense. It's not the sort of thing you can just go out and market. And I went to the hospital as requested and visited her grandmother, who, it was very easy. She was very close to death. And I slipped right in there. I was just inside her consciousness, quick as a wink. And she was afraid. She was afraid to let go. That I could feel. And so I told her, it just happened that it was the full moon that night. So I pointed out to her that it was a full moon, and that in fact the light was bright and her way would be clear and the path was easy. And again, too, reminded her that at a certain point, this is what happens. You know, we're allowed to go, and it's okay to go. And all of this unconsciously, mind to mind. When I finished, I gave her a little hug and left. And she too died that night. So I began picking up a little more confidence in my ability to communicate with those who were dying, and to create for them a sense of security in that moment. Where I got that understanding, I'm not entirely sure. At that point in my life, I had had a number of experiences that certainly could have resulted in death. Tuberculosis when I was an infant, during which I had that walk-in experience that I described earlier. And perhaps that's it. Perhaps it was simply the leaving of the soul that I, at some level, know in my bones, because a soul has in fact left me, and the spirit has left me. And really, that's all death is spirit leaving the body, giving the soul permission to depart as well. So that may be where it originated. I may never know for sure. And that's all the time I have for today. Perhaps on the next one I'll come back with the other couple of stories I have, both of which are very interesting. Thanks for listening. Bye.